The Soviets put the gun on a coin. Mozambique put it on their flag. And at the end of the Cold War, the Kalashnikov had become the Russian people's greatest export. After that came vodka, caviar, and suicidal novelists. This is how the Kalashnikov was described in the 2005 film, Lord of War. With all the ways that this rifle has been honored, it's no surprise that it has become the world's most well-known firearm. Today, I'd like to go over a brief account of the history, the designer, and dispel some of the mythology that surrounds this firearm. The rifle I'm of course talking about is none other than the AK-47. To understand this firearm, we have to look at why the idea of the assault rifle was invented. And we have to look at the Germans on the Eastern Front during World War II. According to Ian McCullen of ForgottenWeapons.com and author of the book Chasse Poste Famas, in his video entitled Sturmgewehr MP44, he discusses the Germans' discovery of the need for this rifle. What they found out was that most infantry confrontations occurred at ranges of 300 meters and in, and the rifles that they had at the time were firing overpowered cartridges that made fast follow-up shots at those distances very difficult. And the only alternative they had at the time was the pistol caliber, fired from submachine guns and handguns. And what they discovered was they needed something that filled that gap. According to Marko Vovorobiev, author of the book AK-47, Evolution and Survival of the World's Most Prolific Gun, the Soviets also discovered the same thing. And in July of 1943, there was a military conference. And what they came out of that military conference thinking was, quote, modern warfare demonstrated that effective fire on the enemy is conducted at ranges up to 400 meters. And they decided that they needed a new round, a new intermediate cartridge. So they went from 7.62 by 54R and developed the 7.62 by 39. Now, the AK-47 is the brainchild of Mikhail Kalashnikov, which is where it gets the name Kalashnikov. Mikhail Kalashnikov, during the Second World War, was a Soviet tanker who ended up being wounded in battle. While stuck in bed rest, he still wanted to help the Soviet Union, and he began to try to design new firearms to aid that cause. And he was talking with infantrymen surrounding him and getting their input on to what would make a better infantry rifle. The Soviets caught wind of this and sent him on over to tinkering school, where he would learn the internal workings of small mechanical devices, a firearm being considered one of those. He was then sent to work at a state-run arsenal for the Soviets, and at that time they wanted a new rifle that would fire the new cartridge 7.62 by 39. Kalashnikov submitted his design, and being a new firearm designer, he went up against people like Nagant, Mosin, and Simonov. And again, with him being new, he was one of the few people who actually listened to the critiques that the Red Army gave him and went back to the drawing board and completely redesigned his rifle. On the second trials, his rifle, as well as Simonov's rifle, were picked, replacing the older Mosin Nagant. During troop trials, the Soviets discovered that the AK-47 was able to perform just as well as Simonov's rifle, the SKS. And the parts that Simonov's rifle was excelling at, it really didn't matter according to the Russians and their doctrine at that time. So they went ahead and adopted the AK-47 in the year 1947. Now, with this rifle being as well known as it is, it's built up some of the mythology that surrounds it. One of the most well-known myths is that these rifles are inaccurate. And that's simply just not true. A lot of this mythology of the inaccuracy comes from them being used in developing countries by less than professionally trained soldiers. One key example is during the Rhodesian Brush War, they were capturing rifles with the rear sight set to 800 meters. When they captured a guerrilla, they asked him why everyone was setting their sights to 800 meters. And the guerrilla's response was, well, if you set it to that, it will shoot harder, which simply isn't true. You're adjusting the trajectory of the bullet, not increasing the power behind the bullet. The next rumor is that they're oftentimes built in caves, which again just isn't true. A majority of the time they're sent over to developing countries as part of military aid, and they're stored in these caves for long periods of time and pulled out, and people are claiming that they're being built there. The next is that they're indestructible. According to Jim Fuller, who's a gunsmith at Rifle Dynamics, which is well renowned for building premium Kalashnikov style rifles, He says that the AK design is so well designed that you can make it poorly and it will still operate. When I was in a shooting competition in Arizona, we had one gentleman who was running an AK and myself who was also running the same style of rifle, and his ended up breaking. The components weren't made out of the right steel, and due to the stresses of the internals of the gun, his ended up breaking. So they're not indestructible, but they will last a long time. And the final rumor is what the initials stand for. There's been a myriad of things that people will attach to letters and numbers if they don't understand it. The fact of the matter is that AK stands for Automat Kalashnikov, the Russian designation for the rifle being Automat, Kalashnikov being the designer. And the 47 at the back is just the year that it was adopted, 1947. In review, we've covered the history, inventor, and dispelled some of the rumors that surround this firearm. So next time you're watching a movie or see an AK-47 in the news, you now know a little bit about where it came from. Thank you for watching this, and I hope you found this as interesting as I did doing the research.